Decode the red file. Every line, a truth they tried to erase.
On September 10, 2025, a single gunshot in Orem, Utah brought an abrupt end to the life of Charlie Kirk, one of the most recognizable conservative activists of his generation. He was only 31 years old, speaking at a university debate on gun violence when the fatal shot struck. His assassination was not just the end of a man. It instantly became a haunting symbol of the dangers of America's deep political fractures. To his supporters, Kirk had been a fearless defender of freedom, faith, and the Constitution. To his critics, he was a provocateur who thrived on confrontation and division. His death forced Americans on both sides of the political spectrum to confront uncomfortable questions about rhetoric, extremism, and the line between politics and violence. Charlie Kirk's journey began in Prospect Heights, Illinois, where he was born in 1993 into a middle-class family. As a teenager, his ambitions were military. He dreamed of attending West Point and serving his country in uniform. But when his application was rejected, it shattered his plans. Instead of giving up, the setback became a turning point. At just 18, with little money and few connections, he co-founded Turning Point USA, an organization designed to challenge what he saw as the liberal takeover of higher education. Kirk started small, in a garage with a handful of volunteers, but his timing was critical. The Obama presidency has energized political debates across the country, and on college campuses especially, Kirk found fertile ground for his message. Through fiery speeches, debates with students, and a talent for turning confrontations into viral social media moments, he began to build a movement. The rise of Donald Trump in 2016 gave Kirk's activism a powerful new platform. His youthful energy and sharp attacks on progressives made him a natural ally of Trump's populist politics. That year, at just 22 years old, Kirk spoke at the Republican National Convention. It was a remarkable leap. A young man with no college degree, running an organization born in garage, now standing in front of national television audiences as one of the GOP's rising stars. By the early 2020s, Turning Point USA had grown into one of the most influential conservative activist groups in the country, with massive rallies, nationwide campus networks, and a reputation for shaping young voters' political engagement. Some credited Kirk with playing a key role in mobilizing youth support that contributed to Donald Trump's 2024 re-election. Kirk's vision extended beyond traditional politics. He insisted that winning elections was not enough. Conservatives needed to win the broader culture, particularly among students. His signature Prove Me Wrong debates, where he would challenge students to argue against his positions on contentious issues, became a hallmark of his activism. Supporters admired his fearlessness in confronting opposing views, but critics accused him of turning campuses into hostile spaces where dissenting students felt attacked. One of his most controversial projects, the Professor Watchlist, identified university professors accused of spreading leftist propaganda. To his base, this was accountability, but to his opponents, it was intimidation that risked creating an atmosphere of fear in academia. On social issues, Kirk was unapologetically hardline. He opposed abortion in all circumstances, including cases of rape and incest, framing his position as a moral defense of unborn life. Critics, however, viewed this absolutism as extreme and harmful to women's rights. He was similarly uncompromising on LGBTQ issues, rejecting same-sex marriage and arguing that traditional family structures were essential to preserving American society. For many conservatives, this was moral clarity in an era of shifting cultural norms. But for progressives, it was discrimination under a different name. His foreign policy stance was equally polarizing. As a vocal supporter of Israel, Kirk strongly opposed a US recognition of Palestinian statehood, describing Palestinian leadership as corrupt and violent. This earned him praise from pro-Israel conservatives, but sharp criticism from human rights advocates and pro-Palestinian activists who accused him of ignoring systemic abuses. On race, his remarks repeatedly drew fire. He opposed affirmative action and diversity programs, arguing they undermined merit, and once remarked that seeing a black pilot made him hope he was qualified. a comment widely condemned as racist. Kirk dismissed the backlash, insisting he was speaking uncomfortable truths. On guns, he consistently rejected restrictions even after mass shootings, declaring that the Second Amendment was non-negotiable. On climate change, he dismissed mainstream science altogether, describing it as exaggerated and fabricated. Charlie Kirk not only quoted controversy, he embraced it. Statements such as calling Martin Luther King Jr. an awful person or dismissing parts of the Civil Rights Acts of 1964 ensured constant headlines. For every critic who condemned his rhetoric, thousands of his followers applauded his refusal to back down. Even within the Republican Party, his influence was divisive. Some saw him as a generational leader who had reshaped conservative youth politics. Others warned that his confrontational style risked narrowing the party's appeal. But what no one could deny was his impact. He had mastered polarization as a political strategy. Every insult amplified his profile, and every controversy expanded his base. That career was cut short on September 10, 2025. At Utah Valley University, Kirk was in the middle of a debate on gun violence when a single rifle shot rang out. The bullet struck his neck, and despite efforts to save him, he died hours later in the hospital. The shooter was identified as a 22-year-old Taylor James Robinson, who surrendered after a 30-hour manhunt. Investigators found he had planned the attack for over a week and left behind the writings filled with anti-fascist imagery and resentment of Kirk's rhetoric. Yet authorities found no evidence of a broader conspiracy or ties to an organized extremist groups. His actions appeared to be those of an individual radicalized by anger and ideology. The irony was chilling. Kirk, a staunch defender of gun rights, had been killed in the middle of a debate about firearms. The assassination sent shockwaves across the country. Conservatives pointed to it as evidence of escalating left-wing extremism, with Donald Trump vowing to clarify Antifa as a terrorist group. Liberals, while condemning the killing, cautioned against framing it as the responsibility of an entire movement and warned against using the tragedy to further polarize national politics. 11 days later, tens of thousands gathered at State Farm Stadium in Arizona for Kirk's memorial service. Republican governors, senators, and party leaders paid tribute to him, emphasizing his role in energizing conservative youth. In one of the service's most striking moments, his widow, Erica Kirk, addressed the crowd. Instead of anger, she chose forgiveness, publicly pardoning her husband's killer in line with her Christian faith. She also announced her intention to continue her husband's work by stepping into a leadership role at Turning Point USA. Charlie Kirk's legacy is complicated and fiercely contested. To his supporters, he was a visionary who made conservatism accessible and appealing to young people, an organizer who built institutions that will influence American politics for years. Vice President J.D. Vance credited him with shaping much of the Trump movement's grassroots strength. To his critics, however, Kirk's rhetoric deepened cultural divides, normalized intolerance, and inflamed political hostility at a dangerous moment in American history. They argue that his words on abortion, LGBTQ rights, race, and Palestine did not just spark debate, but harden divisions in ways that will outlast him. His story is, in many ways, the story of America in the 2020s. It is a story of ambition and controversy, of meteoric rise and tragic end, of how deeply polarized politics can elevate figures who thrive on conflict, and also how that conflict can turn deadly. From a rejected West Point applicant to one of the most recognizable conservative voices in the country, Kirk's life was as dramatic as his death. His assassination forces Americans to confront a haunting question. In a nation where politics increasingly resembles warfare, who will be the next? Charlie Kirk is gone, but the movement he built remains. The institutions, debates, and divisions he amplified continue to shape America's political landscape. Whether his legacy is seen as courageous leadership or reckless provocation will depend on who you ask. But what's certain is that his name, his message, and his impact will not fade from American politics anytime soon.